Previously on ENCORE. We saw a face. The face of a decomposing skull that had been buried behind the theater. It was a child. Buried secrets? Socioeconomic commentary? Or the biggest modern cover-up by local government? All factors could come into play when you do enough digging. My name is John O'Davis, and I'm the manager at the Jennie T. Anderson Theater in Cobb County, Georgia. I have a story that's been the theater's biggest secret in years. Only a few are aware. Now we're blowing this door wide open. This is ENCORE, a new miniseries by Jennie T Radio and Cobb County Parks and Cultural Affairs. This miniseries excludes profanity, but it does contain gore and graphic situations that are relevant to the stories being told. If things like murder, conspiracies, and ghosts scare you, then now is the time to change the channel. The views and opinions expressed on ENCORE are those of the narrator and do not reflect those of Cobb County Parks. This is a storytelling, history, and crime-solving podcast and should be viewed for entertainment purposes only. When you work for the government, the first thing they tell you is, keep us out of the news. Local and state governments are featured in the news too often for little slip-ups to put us in the negative light. Especially when taxpayers and the citizens often fault the government for anything that goes wrong. It's all in the eye of the beholder, but I digress. You probably could have guessed it. I did not get to go home after the police and county officials arrived. Because of the startling and disturbing revelation that the body of a child was found behind the theater, of course all staff needed to stick around and answer questions. Obviously, none of us were truly being accused of anything, but it's understandable that they would need to conduct a thorough investigation. We followed the chain of command. My boss called his boss called her boss, and so on. Pretty soon, the county manager, someone who I rarely see only at special events, showed up. There was a look of worry on her face. Very understandable, as I would be concerned if she wasn't visibly worried herself. She was one of those higher-ups who contacted the appropriate law enforcement. In the chaos of about 50 people huddling within a 30-square-foot space, they carried the body away. I'm not sure where it went, but fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars were coming in and out frequently. Look, I don't know how situations like these get analyzed, nor do I know the order of operations for crime scenes. But I did find it strange that nobody seemed to take any time inspecting the body while on site. Shouldn't it be splayed out all night while crime scene investigators comb through the evidence? Maybe how it's done in real life is different than how it's done on television. Huh. In regards to the staff being questioned, there's really not much to go off of when all of your responses are, I don't know. The area surrounding the Anderson Theater isn't really a spot for high crime. In fact, it's rare that we hear of any scandalous news in Marietta. We do have a high homeless population. Many of our homeless friends camp out in the hidden patches on the property. None have shown any violent tendencies, at least to staff. Some might occasionally be a little surly, but none I can think of would be suspect to something like this. This discovery is a big deal. At this point, it's about 2.5 hours after Mitchell and I made the initial finding. One of those Caterpillar cranes came driving up. Ugh, what a mess. About a month before, the county installed a new sewer line for the theater and the neighboring civic center. The patch of land and the parking lot were torn to bits, then repaved. I remember this because while we normally parked in this area of the lot, we now had to park farther away. First world problem, I know. But now that we're tearing into this area of grass again, and that would mean we'd have to once again park in the lot that is farther away. Leslie said, "If they're bringing in a crane, do you think that they suspect something else underground?" That was a very good question. The two of us continued to wait, away from everyone else. The theater is built on a hill, so our offices at the front of the building were overlooking the crime scene. It was actually a very nice view. For the next 30 minutes or so, nothing happened on our end. People were putting pieces of this puzzle together, but we were not included. We stayed outside, keeping a peripheral eye on the scene, but we drifted off into our phones. I remember wondering if we should consider grabbing dinner. Maybe one of us could go out and get something for both of us. I mean, if we're going to be there for a while, we've got to eat. That moment was cut short when Mitchell walked up the hill to get us. He was actually going inside to be alone. He walked with a sense of exhaustion and sadness. As he walked by, he said, "Y'all can go home now. They'll be here all night and they don't need you anymore." Well, that's a relief. We both asked the obvious questions. Had they received any missing person reports recently? Do they have any idea who this is or who could have done it? He shook his head no. As he walked away, Mitchell stopped and looked back. He said, "It was twins." He went inside, walked into his office, and closed the door. Thank you for listening to this episode of ENCORE. This miniseries will continue next week.